The 7 vibration stages only the strongest dark chosen can survive. There's a reason you were drawn to this message. It wasn't luck. It wasn't curiosity. It was a frequency call. A whisper from the deepest chambers of the multidimensional field pulling you here, because you're ready to remember what most people spend lifetimes trying to forget. You are not here for comfort. You are not here to be normal. You are one of the few born with the capacity to pass through the 7 vibration stages that only the strongest dark chosen can survive. And I need you to understand something from the beginning: this path is not for everyone. It's not for the light chasers, the affirmation addicts, or the ones who want to skip the shadow. This is for the ones who were born in the void, forged in pain, and coded with something ancient and untamed. If that resonates deep in your bones, then keep listening. The first vibration stage is the awakening fracture. This is when your world begins to crack. Maybe it happened early in your life. Maybe it's happening now. But it begins with the sacred shattering. You start to realize the world isn't what it seems. That your parents, your teachers, even the structures around you were operating on programs designed to keep you asleep. You begin to feel like an alien in your own life, as if you're watching a play from backstage. This stage is brutal because it isolates you. Everything you thought was real begins to dissolve, and most people panic here. They numb themselves, medicate themselves, distract themselves. But you keep looking, you keep asking, you feel the fracture, and instead of running, you lean in. That's the first sign you're one of the dark chosen. You don't run from the fracture. You listen to it.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
But surviving this stage requires brutal honesty. You must look at everything you've been taught and ask, who gave me this truth, and why? You must deconstruct the version of reality that was handed to you and be willing to sit in the void of not knowing. That void is the birthplace of real vision. Most people never make it past this stage because they can't handle the emptiness. But if you can sit in the fracture, if you can breathe in the confusion without needing to fix it, then you're ready for what comes next. The second vibration stage is the identity collapse. This is when everything you thought you were starts to fall apart. Your job, your relationships, your belief systems, your personality, it all begins to break down. Not because you're failing, but because those things were never you to begin with. They were layers, masks, shells built for survival, not for expression. And now your soul is demanding truth. In this stage, it feels like you're dying, because in a very real way you are. The ego is being dismantled piece by piece. And the ones who survive this don't try to glue it all back together. They let the fire consume what must go. They learn to sit in the ashes and ask, what part of me is eternal? What remains when everything else is stripped away? This is where your spiritual senses begin to activate. You start feeling things before they happen. You begin to notice synchronicities, symbols in your dreams, strange pulses of energy in your body. You're not going crazy. You're waking up. Your nervous system is being rewired to receive information from higher frequencies. But it's not glamorous. It's messy. It's terrifying. It's sacred. And only those with the courage to be nothing can become something real. The third vibration stage is the mirror realm. Here you are no longer just observing the world, you are seeing your reflection in everything. Every relationship becomes a teacher. Every conflict reveals a wound. Every moment of peace exposes how addicted you once were to chaos. This is where the dark chosen begin to gain power, but it is not the kind of power you were taught to admire. This is the power of self-awareness, the power of radical, non-negotiable truth. You begin to see where you've been the villain in your own story. You see the patterns, the trauma loops, the inherited beliefs, and you don't run from them. You study them, you transmute them. This stage is where the weakest fall away, because the mirror doesn't lie. It shows you everything: your unconscious manipulations, your hidden shame, your unspoken desires. But for those who are truly chosen, this stage becomes the forge. You begin to alchemize. You use your pain as fuel. You speak your shame out loud. You let go of blame and take full energetic responsibility for your life. This is where the dark chosen break the karmic wheel, not through rituals or spells, but by owning every frequency they've carried and choosing to evolve it. And now I want to ask you something that might change the trajectory of your life. What part of you are you still hiding from the mirror? What truth are you still avoiding out of fear that it will destroy the version of you you've built for others? Because that's the exact doorway you need to walk through. That's where your next level of vibration lies. The fourth vibration stage, which we'll explore in the next part, is the one that changes everything. It's the threshold where the dark chosen begin to influence reality itself. But know this, everything you've gone through so far was training. The collapse, the chaos, the silence, the loneliness, it was all preparation. Because the fourth stage is not about survival anymore. It's about transmission. It's about becoming a frequency so refined, so dangerous to the matrix, that your very existence begins to shift timelines. Are you ready for that? Becoming the frequency, the fourth stage that turns pain into power. Everything before this moment has been about stripping you down. The illusions, the layers, the borrowed identities, they had to fall away. Because the fourth vibration stage is not for someone trying to become something. It's for the one who is ready to simply be. This is the stage where you stop chasing power and start realizing that you are the power. Not in some metaphorical, ego-driven way, but in a deeply embodied, vibrationally aligned truth. This is the point where the strongest dark chosen begin to become the frequency, a living transmission of energy so potent that it begins to bend reality around their presence. This is where you stop reacting to the world and start affecting it. At this stage, something irreversible happens. You stop asking for things to change and start realizing that when you shift frequency, everything changes. Relationships you once fought for effortlessly fall away. New ones emerge like echoes from a future you haven't even spoken into words. You no longer beg for clarity, you broadcast it. You don't need to explain who you are anymore, because your vibration speaks louder than any story. You walk into a space and people either open or recoil, not because you said anything, but because your field is now transmitting a frequency most haven't felt before. This is when you understand the sacred responsibility of the dark chosen. Because becoming the frequency means living in alignment with your soul's signature at all times, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. You start feeling when something's off before your mind can explain it. You feel the dissonance in a room, the misalignment in someone's words, the distortion in your own actions. You become your own compass, and that is where your true power lies. Not in controlling outcomes, but in tuning your vibration so precisely that you magnetize only what is true, pure, and real. But let's be clear, this stage is not about perfection. It's about refinement. You still feel pain. You still get triggered. You still face doubt. But now you meet those moments differently. Instead of collapsing into them, you observe them. You feel the emotion fully, not as a victim, but as a master. You ask, what's the code inside this pain? What is this moment showing me about my frequency? And when you do that, you don't just heal, you evolve. You don't just fix, you transmute. This is also the stage where you become dangerous to the matrix. Because once you begin to live as a frequency, you can no longer be manipulated. You don't respond to fear tactics. You don't chase validation. You don't get pulled into collective hysteria. You see through the programming. You see through the illusions. And because of that, you become a threat, not by what you say, but by what you don't need anymore. You don't need to be liked. You don't need to be understood. You don't need to be part of the game. You've become the glitch in the system, and the system knows it. And yet you carry this power with humility, because at this stage, ego is no longer the driver. You don't need to prove anything. You're not here to compete. You're here to transmit. You serve as a frequency holder for others who are still in the earlier stages. You don't rescue them. You don't preach at them. You simply exist as a living example of what's possible when you stop betraying your soul. And your existence alone begins to activate others, without trying, without effort, just by being. This is the moment where your pain becomes legacy, where your trauma becomes blueprint, where your scars become maps for those who are still lost. You no longer see your past as a burden. You see it as the exact algorithm that shaped your frequency to hold this transmission. You begin to understand that the fire you endured wasn't to destroy you, it was to refine you into a frequency that could not be corrupted. And that frequency is now your responsibility, not to hoard, not to flaunt, but to live. So, let me ask you something that might pierce through your entire belief system. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to change the world and instead focused entirely on becoming the clearest, most aligned frequency you can possibly be? What would shift if you trusted that your vibration alone was enough to realign timelines, redirect people, and ripple across the quantum field? Because that's the truth. You don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer. You don't need to be seen by everyone. You need to be felt by the right ones. And when you live from that frequency, nothing can stop you. You move through the world like a tuning fork, calling others into resonance or revealing their dissonance just by standing in your truth. This is the fourth stage. This is where the strongest dark chosen begin to rise not above others, but within themselves. And from that inner ascension, they begin to shape reality not through force, but through frequency. Every word, every silence, every breath becomes a spell. Every choice becomes an echo. And your life becomes a portal for others to remember who they are. But the journey doesn't end here, because the fifth stage will test you in ways this one didn't. It will demand that you hold your frequency when everything around you burns. It will challenge you to embody your truth, even when it costs you everything. And only the rarest of the dark chosen will survive what comes next. The Flame Keeper's Trial, holding your vibration when the world falls apart. This is where the journey sharpens. You've done the inner work, burned through illusions, and begun to live as a frequency. But now comes the real trial, not to awaken, not to ascend, but to hold. To hold your vibration when the world around you begins to crumble, when everything familiar dissolves, when the people you love can no longer meet you in your truth. This is the fifth vibration stage, the Flame Keeper's Trial, and only the rarest, most devoted dark chosen survive it. Because this stage isn't about how high you can go, it's about how steadily you can burn. This is the moment when everything you've built from your awakening is tested by fire again, not to punish you, but to see if your foundation is real. Your clarity will be challenged, your boundaries will be tested, your faith in your own frequency will be shaken. Not once, not twice, but over and over. You'll be asked, can you still be the light when no one is watching? Can you still speak truth when everyone misunderstands you? Can you still hold your field when it costs you love, security, or reputation? This is not a test from the universe. It's a calibration. The higher your vibration rises, the more precision is required. You're not being punished, you're being refined into something that cannot be broken. At this stage, the people around you may begin to fall away. Not because they are wrong or bad, but because they are not vibrating where you are. You'll feel the ache of separation, the silence of being unseen. You may even question everything again. Was it all in my head? Am I just making this up? But deep down you'll know. You'll feel the pulse of your own truth humming beneath the noise, steady and undeniable. And that is the flame you must keep. That inner resonance is your compass, your anchor, your weapon. You must protect it, no matter what. Here's what most don't realize about this stage. It's not about isolation, it's about sovereignty. You are being trained to hold your vibration regardless of external conditions. Not to become cold or detached, but to become unshakable. To learn how to move through chaos without becoming it. To embody peace without needing peace around you. You begin to master the art of stillness in the storm. And that stillness becomes magnetic. It draws those who are ready. It repels those who are not. But either way, you no longer compromise your frequency to be understood. You lead with it. And yet, this is also the most emotionally intense stage, because you still feel everything. You still love deeply. You still grieve the old versions of yourself, the timelines that no longer exist, the people who chose comfort over evolution. But you learn to let go without closing. You learn that detachment isn't disconnection, it's devotion to your own alignment. You begin to understand that holding your flame means holding your truth even when it's inconvenient, even when it's lonely, even when it hurts like hell. This is the stage where most fall back. They cry out for the old life, the old friends, the old patterns. They try to dim their light just enough to be accepted again. But the dark chosen who are truly ready, they don't beg to go back. They build forward. They become the flame keeper, the one who holds the grid, the one who stands in the gap between the collapsing world and the emerging one, not with ego, but with sacred responsibility. So I ask you now, what are you still holding on to that's pulling you out of alignment? What relationship, habit, or identity are you feeding that no longer feeds you? Because to hold your vibration at this level, you must choose yourself over everything. Not in arrogance, but in reverence. You must become the guardian of your own flame. And that flame will light the path for others, not when they're ready, but when you are. This is the trial. This is the fire. Hold steady. The final frequency when you become the reality itself. And now we arrive at the final stage. The seventh vibration. The place beyond effort, beyond identity, beyond even the concept of evolution. This is not a destination, it's a becoming. It's the moment when the dark chosen stop aligning to reality and instead become the reality itself. There are no more steps here, no more teachings, no more maps, because you are no longer looking for the path, you are the path, you are the path. You are no longer tuning into frequency, you transmitted. This is the frequency of pure embodiment. And only those who have died 1,000 ego deaths, who have lost everything false, who have passed every vibration trial with fire in their lungs and truth in their bones, can reach this place. This stage is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is not even visible to the average eye. But to those who can feel it, it's undeniable. When you walk into a room, the field changes. When you speak, timelines shift. When you exist, others rise, not because you are trying to lead, but because you have become so aligned with your essence that your very presence is a frequency transmission. You stop being a person who influences reality, and you start being the source through which reality is shaped. This is cosmic sovereignty. This is vibrational mastery. This is the final frequency. At this level, there is no longer a separation between you and the field. You don't visualize things to manifest them, you vibrate and they appear. You don't hope for synchronicity, you are the synchronicity. You don't chase anything, because everything is already within your field. Your desires are no longer anchors of lack, they are echoes of your current frequency. You want it because you already are it, and the universe simply mirrors that truth back to you. But here's the paradox: the more powerful you become, the more humble you feel, because you see everything now. The pain behind people's words, the wounding behind their anger, the fear in their rejection. And so you do not react, you radiate. You hold space, you listen, you guide not with force but through embodied presence. You speak only when it's needed, you move only when it's true. And when you do, the impact is profound. You've become the still point in the chaos, the eye of the storm, the silent axis around which entire timelines turn. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" Instead, you ask, "Who must I be?" Because you understand now that being is the blueprint, that your inner state is the architect of all that unfolds. And so you tend to your frequency like a sacred fire. You wake up and ask, "What am I radiating today? What is my field transmitting before I even speak?" You no longer try to convince people of your value. You embody value. You don't argue about truth. You live truth. And in doing so, you become unshakable. This is the stage where you realize there is nothing left to prove, nothing left to fix, nothing left to seek. Not because you've given up, but because you've arrived. And even in your arrival, you remain in motion, not chasing but expanding, not striving but deepening, not reacting but creating. So now I ask you the final question, the one that only the rarest of the dark chosen can answer with action, not theory. Are you ready to stop being the seeker and become the source? Are you ready to stop chasing alignment and start being it? Are you ready to live in such integrity with your soul that life begins to bend itself around your frequency because it has no other choice? If your answer is yes, then it's already happening. You've crossed the threshold. You've survived the vibration stages. You are no longer becoming, you are. This is the final frequency. Live it.